Brian. I'm a hemp farmer. And, bless you. So, I, in most areas, like to talk about what's not the current gold rush, okay? And so what's not the current gold rush is the fiber side of the plant. The reason the fiber side of the plant is not currently part of the gold rush is because of the amount of acreage that's needed. We need that amount of hemp to replace corn and soy and wheat and some of the other acreage for reasons of human survival, in terms of sequestering carbon and building soil. But building markets for it is very, very difficult for an individual farmer. I also know from experience how difficult it is to make a farm partnership work. But if the fiber is worthless to any individual farmer, but worth it when farmers form a cooperative or some sort of arrangement just on the fiber side, all they have to do, all you and I have to do is open our gate at harvest time, and the co-op truck comes and takes it to the $3 million facility and processes it into what's already can't be kept in stock, a high value product, which is the herd, used for things like high quality animal bedding and high quality animal bedding and hemp and building materials, right? So quickly then, and so just something to think about. Hemp fiber cooperatives, you're gonna have to write grants or find Santa Claus to finance the facility. But when you figure out that little multi-million-dollar hurdle, it may be a way to go. It actually turns this into the gold rush and not just CBD. So for those who don't know the architecture of the fiber, this is mixed fiber, in other words, just harvested and baled. Nothing special done to it. The long strips of fiber on the outside are the bast, used in things like, in my hemp pants today, your Rick's scarf, yeah? Your scarf is hemp? 100%. So that's the bast. Herd, as we were discussing, hemp building and animal bedding, but there's a million other uses. I think they said at the Colorado Hemp Project booth, there's pulverized fiber that's super absorbent and used for industrial spills and cleanup. So that's my 2 cents.
Paper, right? Obviously, hempcrete, building, construction materials, energy materials, supercapacitors, all that can be driven from the fiber in the herd.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, you have a question? So the question is, the stock, does it have to be decorticated? The short answer is yes. So yeah, you have to do something. You can't just take it from the stock. You have to process it into a fiber, a non-woven or woven material.
For textiles, but not for the super low-end stuff that the low-hanging fruit that we're talking about. Hempcrete, you do need to separate the herd from the bast, but there's a whole range of, so if we had a hempcrete builder up here, they'd be saying something very different from a textile manufacturer in a facility in China. But this is, I've interviewed a lot of people about this, okay? Because there's a chapter in a book I'm working on about this. And the bottom line is, it is not ridiculously expensive nor rocket science if you're just trying to make use of herd for industrial applications. And even bast for supercapacitors doesn't have to be pretty. You understand what I'm saying? You can bale it like this, but for a scarf like that, that's the other side of the processing spectrum.
This is a lot more processed than that, obviously.
In other words, you can run just a chopper rather than a high-priced decorticator if all you're looking for is the herd. The legitimate ones that I've turned up in my research are $3 to $5 million for like a couple of ton capacity per day. So a medium size, like 100 Midwest farmers contributing 1,000 acres each for that kind of facility. Yeah. Have you turned up any like really good, reliable decorticators?
I mean, we're not there yet. I just got back from China. China is there, right? I mean, everything I'm wearing is Chinese hemp. It's all hemp, but this is manufactured in the U.S., but obviously it's made from textiles that are from China, right? So China has over 100,000 hectares of crops now, specifically for fiber and for crops and for supercapacitors and energy. Like they're light years ahead of us from a technology standpoint on the fiber piece of it, right? Fiber and nanotechnology, graphene, supercapacitors, all that sort of stuff. They're doing a good job.
This is what the herd looks like when it's just the herd. Find me afterwards.
That's what I heard.
Wow.
I heard that. All right, another question. Someone else have another question? We have, by the way, best-selling author Doug Fine on stage. Let's ask him some questions. You guys have questions out there? What you want to do? Where you want to go with the crop? What you can do? Mr. Doug can answer most of those questions.
Thank you for the
Sir,
comments.
right there. So after extraction, what do you do with that extracted flower and bud material? Mr. Fine.
So there's a lot that you can do. Green composting is something that I'm a really big fan of. Right now, there are markets for elements. There are not yet, I should say, markets for lignin in the flower side and the fiber side of the plant, and even residing in the herd of the shell when you're taking the seed apart. Waste material today for dehullers. So this is the log jam for things that are not the current cookie cutter gold rush. Like we've been up here for 15 minutes and have not yet said the word CBD, right? So, and I'm sure that's what many of you people want to be talking about is markets for your CBD, right? So I want to pass this over to the other guys, but I would say that longer term, your work is cut out for you if you're going to be so mission driven as to actually create a market. One of the panelists, Oaks, earlier today, Mr. Oaks was talking about paints and thinners deriving from hemp seed oil. That's like a major improvement over some toxic stuff that most people use every day in their lives. It's not a done deal. Those markets have to be created. Before I pass it over to the really knowledgeable guys on the flower side, though, I just want to say one thing about scale and processing. Personally, I pay the most attention to and myself do a top shelf, very small farm to table product, and I just want you to do the math for a second, because if any entity that you're thinking of in terms of producing CBD crude, just doing females, to be honest, not necessarily building soil and fighting climate change as much as tricrop hemp is. Here's a thing to think about. For a low volume product at 10,000 units that is so high end, it's marketed to where I market for high end food co-ops and spas, $50 wholesale. If you're only even making 10,000 units of your product, do the math. So when you're thinking about CBD, scale is great, but the wholesale market's not going to be there forever. So consider top shelf branding and marketing.
And so to your point, obviously, using that post-extraction material, there's a guy, Ian Terry. If Ian's here, Ian Terry, you can look him up online. He's actually using that post-extraction material to create snowboard, ski, and snowboard wax, essentially. So he's pressing it, taking the wax of that flower material that extracts the flower material, and then using that wax to create a snowboard and a ski wax. So I was just in China. They're using that post-extraction material to create rolls for rolling tobacco, right? For rolling cigarettes. So they're using that material post-extraction for a revenue-generating solution. So there's still value in that post-extraction material.
And they had to create that market themselves. They
Correct.
invented the market.
Correct. Some other questions. We got some new folks that joined us, which is great. We got some new perspective. Anyone else have some questions out there? This is the time, guys. Like you're here. We're in with farmers that have been doing this for half a decade. So there's definitely tried and true experiences. Any questions we have for these guys?
Wild Bill, what about large acreage?
All right, thank you, Bill. So we're going to, where are we going with hemp? So you have the hemp, you planted it, right? Where are we going with it? Are you taking it into distribution? Are you taking it into extraction? Where are we going with this? And so, Joe, if you want to get us started. I have a farm, I have a farm, we've harvested my material. Now what? So let's take it from there. Yep, from harvest.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Joe Pham, Industrial Hemp Farms, partners with a lot of farms around here in Colorado and also in other states. A little bit of background, I've been growing cannabis for about a decade, strictly hemp for the last 4 years. This year alone, we're doing about close to 700 acres out in East Colorado. We also have our own extraction lab that came up in 2018. We do everything from crude to distillation to isolation to THC removal. So we also partner with a lot of different manufacturing companies to make end product, particularly white labeling, or even help you design your own products. So with the experience that I've been able to accumulate in the relationship with my partner, Wild Bill and Tanner, we've been able to make a network of a lot of different special relationships, mainly between farmers and buyers. So last year we were able to start up something where my partner and I, Gus, we just put up some money, our own funds, and started purchasing biomass alongside of whatever we grew, just to see how this would go. We know that biomass is going to be pretty abundant and pretty profitable, so it just made sense for us to purchase and resell. So doing that and building a network, we opened up a market where we were able to purchase different lots from different farmers. At some point, it was 5 to 7 different farmers in our facility at a time that we bought out their entire lot. Not saying that we can continue to do that, because that would be impossible for us. We would love to do that for every farmer, but the reality of it is there's going to be abundant of it. The network that we do have, if something that you want to put in mind, that if you're interested in just selling off your material after harvest, we have a really good network where you can plug yourself into that somehow, and there's different ways to go about it, because every farmer's situation would kind of be unique from a different farmer. So cost and labor and whatever losses or anything like that, that there's like a minimum of X amount that each farmer is looking to bottom out at, pretty much, after harvest. So being able to get into a network where, you know, you're not gonna, don't have the expectation of making say 20, 30, 40, $50,000 per acre. You know, that can be done if you're like vertically integrated, but if you're just farming and you're just trying to get rid of your product, don't have those type of expectations. Especially with the multiplications of applicants all throughout the U.S. and all the states that are coming on. We're here approaching, what, August? There's still biomass available from last season, and that's the truth of it. And there's quite a bit of it. So whenever it comes to this coming harvest season, there's decisions to make, but we can help you kind of reach those decisions. So the second part with the extraction lab, we also extract. That's services that we can also provide, but we'll cap out on our capacity, but we're partners with a few other labs and building labs just to be able to cater to certain people that are within our group. So
Does everybody know is there anybody who doesn't know what he means by biomass? Just straight up the term biomass. Okay, so for those who don't know what that term means, it's generally speaking, we're talking though flower only, female only crops?
So let's define biomass. Actually means a couple of different things. When we're talking about, Bill, let's go into cannabinoid biomass. Let's start with that.
Okay, biomass, the definition of biomass actually is animal and plant waste made into fuel. I guess some brokers started calling it biomass. It's actually hemp material. So
Only a crop of plants.
yeah, but you can call it biomass. So
when we
anyway,
say
it's
cannabinoid biomass. What do we mean?
cannabinoid biomass is the leaves and flowers combined, and you'll get some stem in there. It depends how you harvest it. You're going to get a little stick in there no matter what, but it's the whole plant, pretty much excluding the stalk, because the stalk really clogs up machines, makes things tough. So biomass is considered the whole plant.
So then we're talking female only, Sensimilla. Now, Bill and I both cultivate dioecious crops, male and females, which can be used for all sides of the plant, but especially for seed fiber or soil building. Give a little rundown on harvest to market on dioecious.
Okay, the market for regular, what we used to call industrial hemp. Now everything's changed. The regular food fiber crops, that's pretty much big ag. You know, you combine it, you separate, the seed will separate, of course, in the bin. A lot of the times, there are crops now you can catch the flower going out the back, but unless it's a high CBD level, it's just as good to go back into the ground for nutrients, and then you leave the stalk out in the field. So basically, on your regular food fiber crop, you're getting the seed, which you immediately need to take to the dryer, otherwise it'll get hot and it won't be any good, and it could even catch fire maybe. So if you're harvesting seed, get it dried right away, keep it in movement, otherwise you'll destroy it. Then the stalk, we've learned that it's best to leave it in the field once we get the decortication machine.
So, and quickly on the metrics of dioecious, if you're growing organic, which I mentioned for bottom line economic reasons only for the moment, the highest price that I've heard for if you're, which is a pretty, I have to say, there's no easy farming in this world, but what I find for projects I've been involved in, that growing dioecious hemp for seed harvest is the easiest, lowest maintenance. The other thing is it scales up well. If you've already got a combine and silos and places to store it, and follow those basic rules like getting them dried, it's not rocket science. 500 acres is almost as easy as about 50 acres, and your bigger expenses really just on things like climate-controlled storage and fuel on your harvest. But the best prices I've heard have been for organic $1.50 a pound on contract. So let's be conservative and say you grow organic and get $1 a pound. The new average on harvest per acre is 1,000 pounds per acre. That's I do better on my cultivars, but you want 1,000 pounds dry weight seed on your harvest. So you're talking about $1,000 per acre, not much of a revenue on 20 acres, but if you're talking about a section or even 500 acres, do the math. You're not working that hard, and it's more than corn, I guarantee you, corn or wheat is paying you. And it's organic, so you're sequestering carbon and saving our grandchildren.
And you're also replenishing the soil for sure. Other questions? Bill?
Okay, so what are you going to do with it once you get your crop in? Give Joe a call. If you're on the Western Slope, you can get a hold of Tanner. He can come look at it, because before anything is bought, it's got to be, you know, tested, especially this year, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, heavy metals, anything that's in it. There was some issues last year that people sprayed their crops. Some extractors ran it through, totally rotten product. They couldn't sell it. So try not to spray. Well, you can't spray, especially with the new rules coming out. So get your crop, get it tested. First, of course, the state, get independent testing done and get everything you can run on, from heavy metals to pesticides and everything else. Then you can present the product to Joe. We could have Tanner come out here, look at it. He's got so much he don't know what to do with, but he's smart, he contracted it. So, and another thing, don't let some of these extractors tell you, well, you give us your crop, and you know, when we get done extracting for it, we'll split the profit with you, we'll give you some kind of split on it. Last year I knew guys that lost almost $5 million by one company in Colorado. And a lot of these people were from the Western Slope, that these guys came out, oh, we're gonna harvest everything, you give it to us, in 6 months you'll have money. If somebody comes to you with that type of proposition, I would tell them to get down the road. Check out who you deal with, and make sure that you're dealing with good people, and get your product tested. Give Joe Tanner a call, and we'll see what we can do to get rid of it, because Joe's at IHF and got huge distribution all over the United States, and they're also going worldwide. So, you know, shop for people that'll do something with you, but definitely get it tested.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And there's a lot of people new to the industry that are just excited about the economic opportunity, which is great. But we need to make sure that you need to make sure that you check out they're valid, they have money, they're going to fulfill the contract, right? So there's a lot of that going around, and if you want to get into that a little bit.
Yeah, the one thing I would add is kind of vet your buyers. You know, it's early enough now. You can get those paths set up. We use platforms like NoCo. It really helps networking, meeting a lot of people, brings a lot of the buyers and sellers together and things like that. So start using those resources. It's a small community. You start asking around, who did people use last year? How did it work out for you? There will be horror stories, and you don't want to be one of those horror stories. So, you know, the more due diligence that you can do ahead of time, it makes it way easier to sell the product in the end. Having those test results, getting those test results from multiple labs even, because you can't put all your eggs in one basket. So, you know, utilizing multiple testing agencies, getting those results, having everything. Don't listen to letters of intent and proof of funds. You'll get proof of funds that people Photoshop from your own bank accounts even. You know, there's lots of stuff that can happen. So just do your research. There's reputable companies out there that are looking to buy this stuff. If you grow a good product, you have a good, easy resource to sell it in the end.
Proof of funds is best when it hits your bank account, right? That's the best proof of funds. Like, I don't need a document, I need it in my bank, right? So that's proof of funds, I think.
Just a quick contest time here at the Hemp On The Slope stage. For a hemp printed constitution care of Colorado Hemp Company, you can't answer this question if you are in the business doing more than, a ton of product per year. You have to be new to the industry to answer this question. Is it legal right now to take your hemp and your hemp product that meets federal hemp definitions and ship it, let's say from a web order, anywhere in the United States or United States territory? Yes or no? I think the answer is yes. Discuss. You got it. Sorry about that, it was a bad throw.
Brian, you got it. Well done, well done. Yes, the answer is yes. Yes, it is legal, and thanks to friends like Courtney Moran, who sued the U.S. Postal Service in October of last year to allow for legal hemp, to go across state lines by our government, Postal Service. That was upheld in February again of this year. Now the Farm Bill has passed, so you are allowed to ship legal hemp, anything hemp. So hemp seed, hemp flour, hemp oil, hemp cannabinoid extracts are allowed to ship as long as you have your certificate of analysis showing, and your Department of Agriculture certificate. So where it came from and what it contains. If you put that in, you can ship it through the USPS across the board, actually internationally, which is amazing. So thank you for Courtney, and thank you, yes. The answer is yes, you can do that. So Brian, you got a nice little hemp paper from Tree Free Hemp. Give a shout out. All right, we have time, I think, maybe for one or two more questions. Any other questions out there? So, yep, ma'am? John, you want to? So you elaborate. Essentially, you can contact the Colorado Department of Agriculture, and they have a vetted list that is approved of people that will buy the biomass. You want to get into that a little bit?
I'm not too familiar exactly with the list, but I think the list that you're talking about is a list of approved, licensed, like say handlers. Is that correct? Hemp handlers, commodity handlers. Right. Commodity handlers. Okay. Yes. Right.
So start there. So start on our Department of Ag website for Colorado, for people to sell your biomass to, or at least start that conversation with, right, outside of the network.
And that goes along with doing due diligence also, you know, and who you work with and who to be trusted and who's not. I mean, just ask around, because the industry here is still new, but it's been around long enough for reputations and people to be talked about, or just do a little bit of research and ask around. And I wanted to add just a little bit real quick about what to do after harvest. Keep in mind that, to me, the harvest part is more important than planting itself, because this is the part where all your hard-earned money comes to you. And I've seen people mess up right then and there, right at harvest. for many multiple different reasons. The method, their storage, mold, mildew, all type of different issues. So keep in mind that it's very, very important. If you don't have the proper means of harvesting, get in touch with somebody ASAP.
Yeah, you spent the time and energy and money, right, putting this plant in the ground. Make sure when you harvest it, you're not ruining your value of the crop, right? So there's very detailed ways to harvest this and store your crop. So definitely take heed of that. We have time for one more question, then we'll get it back out to Morris. Brian? So the question is hemp good in dry land? Or obviously it is better with irrigation, but is hemp a good dry crop?
Yeah, hemp is way better growing with irrigation. We've done both, and it all depends on Mother Nature, and you know how she can be, especially if you're growing in eastern Colorado. There's some dryland farmers out there, but they don't do near as good as the irrigated farmers. If you're growing industrial, you don't need that much water as compared to all your other crops either. So that's one good thing about dryland farming. If you're down close to a riverbed, you'll have much more success because you got the underground water and those roots go way down. They can search it out. But you can try dryland farming again. It all depends on Mother Nature. This year, it probably could have been pretty good because you got all your seeds out because it was so wet, but now it's dry, and who knows what's going to happen, with the freeze and everything. Colorado's tough to grow in some places. So if you're on the coast, it's a little different, but I would definitely recommend irrigation if you could do it.
Look, can I just real quick give you I'm going to give you a tale of 5 places I planted hemp real quick and give you the story. We dry crop every year, 4th year in a row now in Vermont. It's never a problem, but it's like saying you don't use artificial snow at a ski resort in Alaska. There's rain and moisture all the time, right? So we irrigate for a consulting client of mine in eastern Washington, somewhere in eastern Colorado, exactly like Bill said. It gets thirsty. You leave that 2 or 3 days in those 110-degree dog days of summer, they want to drink. And a lot, of course, depends on the soil. I'm in my debut crop in New Mexico this year. We know our soil, and we have, guess what, in what most people think of a desert, overwatered or underwatered? Take a guess. Overwatered has been the only issue and only in a couple plants, so we learned how to mitigate it. And then talking about Hawaii, for anybody who is cultivating on volcanic soil and crazy time of climate change, is a whole different set of issues with sometimes it's too much water, sometimes not. So it really depends on where you're cultivating.
I mean, the beauty of it is the crop is versatile. It can grow anywhere. Farmers are versatile. They can grow anything anywhere, right? So I think the combination is great. The opportunity is definitely there. I mean, we're seeing a jump. I mean, just in cultivated acres, we went from 25,000 in 2016, 78,000 last year. We're looking to do maybe 150, 180,000 acres as a country this year, right? China's doing 200,000 hectares, right? So 400,000 acres, more or less. So that's still not going to meet the demand of a Coca-Cola or a textile factory, right? So there's still a lot of demand to meet there. There's still a lot of hemp to be grown. So let's give it up to the farmers here for sharing their information. Morris, up next.
Get a big round of applause for not just the awesome Morris Beagle, Lizzie Knight, who run all these incredible events, No-Go, Hemp On The Slope, but also Salt Creek Hemp for being our hosts and primary sponsors here, Colorado Hemp Company, and all the other ones. But ladies and gentlemen, Morris Beagle started No-Go to save the earth. He'd been in the music industry and felt that he had thrown too many CD cases in the dumpster. This guy is helping bring the industry back. Morris Beagle, everybody.
Thanks. Yeah, actually, when I was in the music industry, I worked for a large music and video distributor, and back, it was in like the late 80s and early 90s, one of the things we did when we went into our major accounts, we also did books. And so anything that didn't sell, we'd go in there and basically you strip off the cover of the book, and then you wrap those in a rubber band and send them off to the publisher, and you get credit. All those books ended up in the dumpster. Same thing with CDs. I mean, the amount of jewel cases that I myself have personally thrown in the dumpster over the course of years up until, the late 90s or whatever. I mean, I feel that I had to repent. So this is part of my repentance, is trying to do right by the earth, and that's grow this crop and replace petroplastics and just find better alternatives. So anyway, we've got one more panel, but before we do that, I want to bring up David Wilkinson from the Hemp Business Advisors. He's going to talk about investment, raising money. Who here needs to raise money for their hemp business? Anybody? Anyway, David's got a great organization. He's going to be doing an investor pitch he'll probably talk about here in a second. He's going to talk for 5-10 minutes, and then we'll get the final just kind of general Q&A panel. So if there's anything else that you want to ask, we'll have a select group of people up here to answer your questions. David?
Thanks, Morris. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name's David. What I found is all the boring people went to other industries. You found that? Every person I've met in hemp has amazing personality. They have great ideas and they deserve funding. How many of you know that your idea, your company deserves to be funded? Let me see. All right, very good. At least half of you. The other people have been in other industries too long. Okay, if you know people that are supposed to be funded, do you know why they don't have money yet? There are 7 reasons. Those 7 reasons are for the investors. The investors have 7 reasons that you need to provide for them, and then they'll invest you. So guess what people in the hemp industry believe? If I have a great idea, if I have a good farm that has at least been farming for at least 2 generations, I deserve the capital. I should get funded. And people aren't getting funded. So guess what we're doing? We're putting together, and I've already launched, a funnel that helps people to get funded. Now, we only have 4 different investment companies that are pleading with us to find them companies in the hemp industry, and we can barely find one. You know why? They don't have the criteria that the funders want. If I said to you, if you take these 7 steps, I can guarantee you funding. Would you take the 7 steps or blame the 7 steps? So what we've done is we've developed an event. It's called Invest-A-Pitch. An Invest-A-Pitch is an event like you've never attended. You come and pitch 5 times and you get funded. That's just what it is. That's because there's over $20 billion represented in the room. So if you really believe in hemp and you really want to grow your company, that's what's best for Colorado. That's what's best for the US, and that's what's best for the world. Nobody gets in the industry to get bored. Nobody gets in the industry to get poor. So if we can all work together to get the funding, we're going to make Colorado, the US, and the world a better place. If you would like to get funded, or you know someone who does, just come and talk to me. I'm right there. Our team will be there as well. We'll give you a flyer. Looking forward to helping you get funded for the best of the globe. My name is David Wilkinson, part of the Hemp Business Advisors. Steve's right there with flyers. We've got Carrie right there in the back with flyers, and we'll give you one. Looking forward to helping you get the funds to make a difference. Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to do one more panel here, and this is just an open Q&A. Is Doug Fine still around? He's always good to pull up here. Tim Gordon's going to be up here. And Rick, you can be up here too. This is the general Q&A. So does anybody here have questions still of anything that you want to talk about? This is the open Q&A. We want to get as many questions answered as possible. Definitely thank you to everybody that came out. We're here to build a community that's going to change the world. And the folks here on the Western Slope definitely show a great community. And thanks again to Salt Creek and everybody that's been involved with us for the last several years. All right. Also, if you've got questions about testing, we finally got somebody to talk about testing. You want to go? Let's give a little testing overview. Since we really haven't got into the testing lab side of things, One thing that was missing from today, let's, why don't you give an overview of where we're at with testing in Colorado when it comes to this crop?
Sure. So my name is Luke Mason. I'm owner, lab director of ARM Labs. We're a licensed, certified marijuana and hemp testing facility down in Durango. We've been offering testing services for about a little over 5 years now. Pretty much everything that we do came out of the marijuana world, and the testing needs there, well, it's all exactly the same for hemp. Just one market's looking for THC, one market's looking for CBD. Current state of testing, you know, it's interesting. In marijuana, I hear from clients, what is the minimum amount of testing that I can do to be compliant? And I get the complete opposite from the hemp industry. And I think that it's a very good thing that you guys are being proactive. The consumers are demanding that safety testing. The producers are taking it seriously, going above and beyond regulations or the lack thereof. And so it's very proactive on testing in the hemp world. We're able to do, you know, your basic potency test, measure the cannabinoids, residual solvents if you're working with concentrates, microbial contaminants if you're working with like smokable flour or edible products, pesticides, heavy metals, and the latest method that we just finished up is mycotoxins. And in terms of what's required in Colorado, there's not much. You guys all know that the Department of Ag can maybe at some point come around and randomly sample. We like to work with clients to, you know, not just test your product at the very end, but get to know your cultivars, get to know your little micro environment that you're trying to produce in. And, you know, we've worked very well with clients to, you know, maybe once a week, once every other week potency testing, to where they can come back the next year and nail their harvest window to within maybe a week, 2 weeks. They know exactly when it's going to be because it's growing the same thing, same processes, no problem. It's kind of the same thing with breeding programs. If you're really pushing that limit on CBD yields, then, you know, you absolutely need to be measuring that THC as well. Make sure you're compliant. You know, in terms of latest at the state level, in terms of requirements, I do know there was the hemp workshop or the hemp working group last year that helped refine the rules to allow hemp producers to submit samples to a licensed marijuana testing facility like ourselves and just make that whole process more streamlined. And then, you know, we should be working on with the CHAMP initiative and everything else, you know, exactly what are the testing requirements, you know, both the intervals and the, you know, the action levels as well. So that should be coming soon.
So here's a question that somebody asked. With Amendment X that passed last year, Tim?
So with Amendment X that passed last year,
Yeah, well, so either one of you two, is there any, what's up with that? Does it really mean anything in the long term for Colorado?
so Amendment X just passed last year. Tim, do you want to get into what Amendment X was and how is it impacting Colorado's hemp industry specifically?
Or does it at all?
Yeah, I mean, and Tim, by the way, Tim is the president of the Colorado Hemp Industry Association. So, Tim, in your perspective and your experience, how does Amendment X impact Colorado?
Amendment X basically removed the definition of hemp out of the statute and amendable to potential federal regulations. But the federal regulations that are coming down in place are essentially what we put forth in the state statute as it is. So there's really going to be no effect from Amendment X as federal regulations come on in place here in the state of Colorado. So this is a Q&A time, guys. Anything you guys want to talk about? There's some good minds up here besides mine not being, but Bill, Rick, Luke here, there's some good opportunity to ask questions. If you
There's
didn't
some
get
good
any
minds
answers.
besides us. But
Sure.
yes.
Yeah, I was just curious. We went to the Hemp On The Slope in Grand Junction, middle of May, maybe 2.5 months in. We've had our nose in the dirt so much that we don't know if anything really changed out there in Colorado. Has anything changed in the last 2.5 months that you want to update us on?
As far as legislation or as far as.
Yeah, legislation, testing practices.
All right, so the question is, what's the update in the last 3 months, right?
Yeah, so
Where's the update? Where are we at now?
so essentially, you know, since I got to speak over there, I remember your face. You know, essentially since the last 2.5 months since the event, basically the state who encompasses many points of regulation. The governor's office, the CDPH, CDA, everybody has come together for this, what we're calling the CHAMPS initiative, which is the Colorado Hemp Advancement Management Plan. Basically to address most of the topics we've talked about, anywhere from agronomic testing all the way through the supply chain to final products, really to give definition, consumer safety, like I talked about earlier, is the big thing with that, and put smart regulations in place that truly advance the industry here in Colorado. So that's the big thing that's been happening the last 2 months. It's kind of went from a slow spot, now we're starting to gain some serious momentum with the impending USDA regulations, FDA, and associated other federal agencies that are going to have a say in the space.
And that's a combination of private interest and public interest, right, as well,
That's
like
correct.
the government and also public interest.
Yes,
Or also private interest. So good collaboration there and helping Colorado stay at the forefront of this hemp industry domestically. Other questions? Yeah, Brian? So the question is, using hemp to feed livestock, and are there downsides to that? And there's actually a thing called the Hemp Feed Coalition, which we can get into here, but Bill, do you want to take this one?
I don't have a whole bunch of experience, but I do know that there is a lot of interest, specifically in the equine industry. Our spent material that comes out of our factory, I've tested it, it has 23 to 26% protein in our raffinate. So to find a way to put that into the market is definitely viable. People that we know that there's a gentleman by the name of Ethan Voorhees that's out of Iowa that is friendly with this group here. He's had tremendous success feeding his livestock hemp for a couple of years now, I believe.
5 years, yeah, 4 or 5 years.
I can give a little context. It's coming on. There's if you go outside, even in Colorado here, a couple of the federally subsidized opportunity zones where some of these big cattle feedlots sit in are using some of the federal opportunity zone money to do research on hemp feed. They're largely importing it, but you're doing research to talk about triglyceride count and fat content and everything like that. So it's definitely coming down the pipe. Like I said, some of the bigger feedlots in this country that even are associated with the state of Colorado are dipping their toe into this research.
Yeah, some of the more amazing benefits, especially from the cattle side, is that they're seeing less infections. They have to give fewer antibiotics. Their milk production is up. So it's really benefiting the animals the same way it's benefiting us.
And they're finding too that the omegas 3s and 6s are finding their way into the beef as well. So Wagyu beef is more marbleized, right? It actually goes for a higher premium when it's fed hemp seed, right? The CLA, the canalinic acid, I'm messing up. CLA, whatever the term is actually what's helping the marbleization, helping to feed the cattle, which helps feed the humans, right? So there's a group called the Hemp Feed Coalition, so the hempfeedcoalition.org. They've approved hemp seed oil for dogs and for cats, but each ingredient essentially is $250,000 to get approved. So, and when it's something that humans consume, right? So cattle, for example, they need a beginning of life, a midlife, and an end of life study. So we're looking at essentially $700,000 worth of studies to be done. So hempfeedcoalition.org. It's promoted by the Hemp Industries Association and the U.S. Hemp Roundtable. Also, we need private funding to help move that forward. But to answer your question, feeding hemp to livestock is already happening on a limited scale. Not commercially yet because it needs to be approved by the FDA. But it's there, and there's a lot of great studies that show that the meat that you're getting as a result of feeding that cattle is a much higher content of protein, higher content of fat. It's a much better cut of beef than you would get without hemp seed. In this example, probably 1 or 2 more questions. Yes, sir. So are there certain feeds, certain livestock, or certain categories of poultry or fish or chicken or beef that should not have hemp seed, for example? I just got back from China and did a bunch of weird shit. So, and I think it was all served hemp for real. So I was good with it, except for the rooster head, really. But I'm not aware of anything that's not any animal that should not consume hemp seed or hemp seed protein or hemp. Guys, are we aware of anything? Anything? Yeah. No, and I think mammals, right? Just like we're mammals, humans have an endocannabinoid system. So cows and sheep and all that sort of stuff have an endocannabinoid system. So hemp seed and hemp seed oil and hemp protein fits directly within that system, I would imagine. So, yeah, I'm not aware of anything that shouldn't have hemp. Yeah, or the grasshopper. Maybe the grass. No. Actually, Tim can attest to this. The grasshopper loves some hemp, but we don't need to get into that. It might be painful, but grasshoppers ate the shit out of fields a couple years ago. We're not going to name names, and they're not on stage, but they might be. But we had to harvest. They had to harvest early because the grasshoppers loved the hemp. So even grasshoppers, if you want some grasshopper protein, it could be hemp derived. Honestly. Any other questions?